Okay, let's pray and we'll get going. Precious Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for the ones that are here. Pray that you be with the ones that are on their way, that they're not having to plow through rain too bad. You get them here safely, and that you would allow us to have a pleasant time tonight studying the history that you put together. Allow us to give you all the honor and glory for it, and prep us for Kevin in every way, shape, or form. In Christ's name, amen. Okay. So we got to page 104, from what I was told. No serious reform until Pope Paul III ascended to the papal throne. And what a catch he was, with 3 illegitimate sons and 1 illegitimate daughter. Looks like their standards are dropping off just a hair. But the problem you have with all of this is it's to the point where the politics of it is creating the need for certain people. It's not anywhere close to being, what does the Lord want for anything? It's, how's it going to work out? If this country sees this guy, and this country sees this guy, and this guy does this, and this guy does this, where's he from, who's he with, what's his background? That's pretty much what you've got. That's how you can pick a guy that has a background that is just detestable under normal circumstances. There's something about that man that is necessary for that particular time for them to maintain the control that they feel they have to control. That's why you can have somebody with illegitimate children ascending to the Pope. And it appears to be just and it's a fluke. Most of them aren't that far gone. So, but this one is. Church wakes up after Rome was sacked by the barbarians. Once again, somebody swept in, bumped around a little bit, took some stuff, took a few people, and wandered off again, which always allows Rome an opportunity to do what they do best, create a crisis and be able to fix it, because now we have a situation that's arisen. We're going to have to get somebody to protect us, so we can bring somebody in that doesn't necessarily have to be here to watch the backside while we're doing what we're doing. And that's pretty much where they're at. Time to clean up the house of God. Step 1, tune up the College of Cardinals. And we know how much fun that is. Naming some of the reform guys to the college: Saldaletto, Pole, and Kararoff. A lot of F's and A's in that guy's name. So, at any rate, 9 of the new cardinals to the Reform Committee. Okay? This is page 105. All right? One by the name of Gasparo Cantarini was a peacemaker and looking to reconcile with Protestants. How he got on that cardinal committee, I have no idea, other than the Lord wanting him to be there. Because that is the last thing on anybody in the Catholic Church's mind, is to have a reconciliation of any kind with what is, to them, heresy. It's that simple. So, whatever the Lord, that's like when they put me on a pastor search committee. That was grace. Okay? There's no other way that could have happened. Because I'm not what you would want to send to look for a pastor. But the thing about it is the Lord knows what's going on, and He's still weaving a plan, and He'll use what's available on the scene at the time to work the plan. It's phenomenal to watch, phenomenal to read. So, at any rate, but it says in 1537 a formal report was issued. The church needs to reform. Papal office. Now here's what the Church of Rome is saying. Okay, the office is too secular. Popes and cardinals need to give more attention to spiritual matters and stop flirting with the world. Bribery in high places was taking place. Abuses of indulgences, and the indulgences were being sold for cash on the barrelhead for somebody to have their sins taken care of so that they could get a building built. Remember, we talked about St. Peter's Cathedral being built and the Basilica being built by selling indulgences at that particular time. So now here's somebody that's off the radar saying these things, and in doing so, that he's generating, it's going to be a problem. But the evasion of church law, prostitution in Rome, and these and other offenses must stop. All right, now here again, how are you going to stop them? if you're not really listening to the Lord anyway, you got a bit of a problem. So, in 1537, this is all headed for a town in northern Italy called Trent. Time in the wilderness is what some of these guys called it, because remember, the church is kind of wandering. It doesn't have good direction. If you've got to pull a pope that's got that kind of background, you got a problem going on. So at any rate, was caused by Francis I and his desire to stall the council. So what's going on over here is the church, and here's the world over here, secular world, still trying to weave itself in and keep control of these things. Well, he wanted to get things squared away. Francis I did. 2 wars were fought during this time between France and Charles, which is 2 nations fighting. The wars were fought specifically to keep this council from coming together. They didn't want, certain people didn't want it to come together. And what it amounts to is they read the report, they knew what the report would bring about, and in knowing what it would bring about, they needed to delay it as long as they possibly could so that it would win and lose on its own merit somewhere else, not with what was being said. So that's why they were trying to do what they were doing. So, in 1545, now you see how much time's evolved? These things don't happen. This is not a drive-through window here. Those years pass before this stuff comes about. Some new rules. Pope's younger days, no longer acceptable behavior. So what? The guy that's got illegitimate kids, they're going to try not to do that again when they pick a pope. So, okay. Institute Roman Inquisition. Why do they need to do that? They're not worried about what they said about how the Pope and how Rome is running. They need to go track down the heretics and kill them. Well, basically, see, first you're really supposed to track them down and then win them back to the church. But I'm thinking that's kind of a cursory program, and, well, you're not working like, you know. So it appears to be that type of scenario, at any rate. And it says, index of prohibited books, works that any Catholic risks damnation by reading. So, now here's the list you see at the top of the page of how they can fix things. And here's the program that comes about. And keep instituting the Inquisition and get rid of books that and what books are we talking about? Books by Luther, books by Calvin, all the books that had to do with Reformation, they were on the not list, okay? So, by the way, all the books of the Reformers were on this list. Every one of them. As well as Protestant Bibles. So we went about Coverdale's Bible, Tyndale Bible, all of those Bibles that were now in print and they were scattered everywhere. If anybody had anything to do with the church, they could be in a bad scenario if they were caught reading those particular books. All right? What was the book that they had in the 50s that was such a disgrace? Oh, To Kill a Mockingbird. That was just, ooh. Because it was risque. Well, the problem you have is people that have had freedom do not relinquish it easily again. So, bring it on in, guys. Page 105.
All right. Thank you.
Midway. And it says, in Spain, just owning one of these books was punishable by, yes, death.
So,
Not a spanking.
so is this still the Inquisition time frame, or is it?
No. This is
Not the
this is
actual
no. This is not the regular. This
This
is
is-
not the real Inquisition. This is the new and improved
Part
Inquisition.
2 or something.
Yeah, this is Inquisition 2.
Okay, 2.0.
Do okay. And the thing of it is it's like if something's not working and it worked before, pull the old thing off the shelf and put it back into practice. Now you see that nowadays with things. You know, what do they call it now? Retro? Well, it's a retro Inquisition. It worked in the 1200s. Let's put it to use again here in the 15s. And you have to understand too, you can't kill everybody, or you don't have a church. And when the Bible got, if one thing, if out of all this studying, if you find out one thing that made history blow up, it was Luther wanting a book that the common man, Calvin wanting to have that book, Coverdale and Tinsdale wanting to put it in the hands of the plowboy that destroyed the structure of man-made church. Totally destroyed it. Because getting the truth into somebody's hands that isn't being pressured to learn in this way is going to come about with illumination, not pressure and torture and all the other garbage that went along. And the further on you go, you'll find people are becoming less and less attracted to that nonsense till you get up into the 1600s and the 1700s, and then it gets to where people just totally will not put up with it at all. They will not. You just can't do that. So now we don't even kill prisoners. I mean, we've gone so far the other way. So, at any rate, excuse me. The index was kept up to date until 1959. Now, do you realize what that tells you? You could have died for reading a certain book on that list prior to 1959.
Who would have enforced it?
I have no idea. I would imagine there's probably a bunch of stray Jesuits around looking for something to do. Okay? Thank goodness Scotty's not here, because here we are after his buddy Ignatius Loyola again. I mean, that guy generated more problems for the church than he ever fixed, because he was just so far out to lunch with what he was trying to do. These ideas that came to him in starvation, and ideas that came to him in this and that, and missed it. It was just unbelievable what this man put in print and was allowed to get away with. But it just kept rocking back around. And you can see Trent happened, another one happened, and then one in 1962. And that's probably these councils that came about, like the one of Trent, they didn't happen very often. We had one in Nicaea, and then one came about, I think, in the 800s, and then you had this one in with the Council of Trent in the 1500s. To come about and try to get something changed in the church in a formal fashion was like herding cats. You could not get everybody together. Either the king didn't want it, or the pope didn't want it, or the pope wanted it and the king didn't, or vice versa, and it was always tough just to call the council, let alone get something done with it. And here you have. They put a council together up here with this report. They didn't pay any attention to it. They may have sailed that puppy out the window and put together whatever they wanted, because they didn't pay. There was not one thing on that list that was dealt with. A whole new list came up and enforced by the church on its own. So that's just not the way thing. Here's our buddy again, Ignatius. Ignatius' zealot mission statement: be chivalrous soldiers of Jesus, mobile, versatile, ready to go anywhere and perform any task the Pope assigned. And believe me, they meant any task. Okay? If I caught you with Calvin's Bible, kiss you goodbye. As a matter of fact, if he's a real church guy, he's going to be in deep trouble too, just because you were reading the book. That's how screwy they were. I mean, some of these reports they have in some of these books, absolutely hard to believe that was actually part of the church. And they didn't shy away from it. So.
Would that make you a moiter?
I'm sorry?
Would that make you a moiter?
I'm probably a moiterer. Yeah. Yeah. And the thing of it is you just don't know. I mean, and these regulations are out there, and the common man. Okay, let's put a billboard out on Kevin's church. Here's what we're reading today. Okay? Below it, disclaimer. These are on the list. Okay? How many people are you going to have in church reading those books? It's going to be real slim. You see what I'm saying? You see how hard it would be to get anything going forward because of that type of mindset? Unbelievable. So, add to this. Okay, now here we go. Add to this. Now this is Ignatius' list that he put together. Chastity and poverty. Special loyalty to the Pope. Okay, so if you had a Pope that was really off, if it was Innocent III that happened to be the Pope when we were doing this, Katie barred the door. There's going to be more stuff done. You can't even keep journals on the stuff they're doing. They're doing it themselves. Aim. Here again, same deal. To restore spiritual power and worldly influence as Innocent III produced. So our good buddy Innocent always had a marker. He was this. It's like this is the high point, and we're always trying to get back to that. No matter how far down the road you are, you're always looking back, and our good boy Innocent III's on the hill, and that's where we want to go. Doesn't matter what you have to do. You might have to bump off half the church to get there, but you're going to go. So, our good buddy, the Jesuits, defenders assigned to the highest post in heaven, critics consign them to the lowest regions of hell. So if you were pro-Jesuit, these guys were top of the line. If you were anti-Jesuit, you were hoping that the ground was going to open up and swallow every one of them when they went by. So, writing to Thomas Jefferson in 1816, John Adams said, "If ever any congregation of men could merit eternal perdition on earth and in hell, it's the company of Loyola." We'll cross that out on the pigs that we give to Scotty. I didn't realize he went to that college. He was in a funk when he left last week. So. He said he's never going to wear his T-shirt again. So. Whatever their destination, the Jesuits were from the beginning very unique. Okay, and in all sincerity, they were. The people bought into the program like you wouldn't believe. Convert the heathen and reconvert the Protestants in the European territories. That was their mission. Okay, you go find the heretics. Well, if you don't really want to call them that, the heathens, and then you try to convert them. In 1556, Ignatius died, but has 1,000 men he called apostles on 4 continents, and every one of them is going to try to carry out the mandate that Ignatius had laid down. Okay, now. We talked about the Council of Trent trying to get it together in 1537. Well, here it is, 1545, and they finally got everybody to the table, and it wasn't that many at the table. All right, it happened in 3 sessions. None would have guessed that Trent's modest, under-attended beginning would lead to the most important council between Nice and Vatican II. So there you go. You can see how uncommon it was for these type of things to come together. Everything the Protestant Reformation stood for was vigorously and even violently rejected at Trent. Now, you remember before we had the Orthodox Church and the Greek, well, it would be Greek Orthodox to us now. We had the Eastern Orthodox and the Western Church fought through the 5, 6, 7, 800s. And then finally they split when Constantinople was put together and Constantine. Well, okay, now that's the first split in the church. Instead of having one big blob, you now have 2. And here you're going to split again. 1,000 years later, that church that we saw break apart existed, and now it's going to split again. And this time it's going to split into denominations. Because people have been given too much information, and they're coming up with ideas that don't jive with the original paperwork. Okay? So, Protestants emphasized justification by faith alone. Our good boy Luther had put that idea there, and they couldn't dispel that thing. It was like gum on their shoe. Couldn't get rid of it. So the Pope always, whenever he's walking, you know what he hears? Every time. Why? Because when Luther put it down, it could not be budged. Why? Because who did it come from? Came from our good buddy called the Holy Spirit. Put it in that man's head and got it out onto the streets, and they couldn't get rid of it no matter what. The most enjoyable thing I've seen in reading this is how this came about and how it was immovable. It could. Anybody here try to put an egg back in the shell? That was the deal. Could not be done. It was out for good, and it was going to do its thing. Okay. The council rejected a potential compromise, holding that justification is the result of 2 causes. A righteousness that is external to the disciple but added to our account in the eyes of God. Isn't that the one you teach, Kevin? And that righteousness that is internal is infused into the disciple. Okay, that's that infusion program. Okay? And that's how they're going to. The Protestants' external righteousness was an event whereby God counted the person right in his eyes. For the Catholic, internal righteousness was the process whereby God imparted righteousness within the disciple during the course of their life. Now, my first question as a dumb carpenter is, how do you know whether you got it all? If it's being imparted over a time frame. Okay? Now, that's just me. So, obviously somebody else must have thunk that way too. So, at any rate, Trent emphatically linked justification to the process of becoming righteous. Okay? Leaving the notion of being declared righteous to the Protestant proclaimers. So, what does that tell you? You just came to a Y in the road, and there is not going to be any way to put them back together. Never going to happen. Okay? So, Luther, Calvin, Grable, faith alone guys. Had some off-the-wall things every now and again, but they were faith alone. Immovable. Counsel, grace, and human cooperation with God. And if I'm not mistaken, it is still that way. Am I correct, Kevin? I don't think they've swayed from the council's readings are still good today as they were when they put it together in 1537. Okay? So, and with all our good buddy Ignatius, quote, pray as though everything depended on God alone, but act as though it depended on you alone whether you will be saved. That's on his business card. Okay? In other words, he's saying, this trust in God thing, I'm going to go with what I can do, and we'll see if God can pull it up at the end. I'm just telling you, this is right out of the book. This is right off of his paperwork. Okay? You mean you don't believe that, Joyce? Come on, man. What's it take? Come on, we can sway you a little bit, right? No? Okay. So.
They handed out indulgences.
Yeah, thanks. There you go. They're always on the table. We can always swing a couple of those. All right, here we go. Council insisted, Protestants, religious authority, Scripture alone. All right. Council insisted the supreme teaching office of the Roman Church, popes and bishops, as essential interpreters of the Bible. There you go. That's why you can't study on your own. You can't get a daggone thing unless you got a pope or a bishop in front of you. And please, that's common. That's the belief system of the day. So anybody swaying from that a little bit, talk about having crosshairs on you. That's exactly what you got going. So, excuse me. Council of Trent guaranteed modern Roman Catholicism would be governed by God and man, a collaboration. Okay? Now, that to you and I, with what we know now, says it's a death knell for whatever human religion you're going to crank out. Because that's not the way God put it together. That's not what He intends. He doesn't need our help. And they'll never see it. Okay? So, it's just kind of a sad to see it in print. I'm sorry. So, but both parties thought that they represented the true Catholic Church of Christ and their enemies a false version of it. So that is what you need to keep in mind from this point on to today. When you've got a wrestling match with theology, both sides are rooted and concreted in that what they have is the truth. The other side is the heresy, and then vice versa, and which causes an eternal battle that isn't going to be rectified till the day you see that guy we're looking for in the sky. That's when it'll stop. And it's part of Satan and his program and how he wants to control the world, and he wants man to be involved in it so man can eventually or in some way associate worship to him. And that's all he's trying to do. Okay? So, battlefields. These are the battlefields that existed then through the mystics. Christian humanist versus Anabaptist. And we've already studied the Anabaptists, came up with a bunch of good ideas, but when you're up against a humanist, you got a tough wrestling match. Calvinist against the Jesuits. As a matter of fact, the Jesuits were the ones that hunted the Calvinists down. And when you see the Jesuits hunting a Calvinist, the Jesuit thinks he's the truth, here's the heretic. The only problem is, you've got Calvinists that eventually are going to twist this puppy around a little bit, and they're going to come after the Jesuits. Okay? So you just need to realize that it's not an abnormal thing for this to happen. Answer would surface, and the answer would be private devotions. Your belief system is in you, and it is not a corporate entity. Now, you can get together with a bunch of people that believe like you and create a program whereby everybody's personal belief systems all line up together, which is what you would call your local church. But that's not the way they wanted it to happen. Now, here's a wrestling match that starts now. All of these things are transpiring in the old world on all different venues everywhere. Germany, France, Portugal, England, all these different places all have the same scenario type battles going on. Okay? Original church, not the original church. We already went through Henry VIII where he decided he didn't like that program and all of these things, so he just made his own church. But his church followed the old church rules, but only he instituted them. All right? But here's the deal that kind of helped a little bit. Thursday, October 11th, 1492, a new world opened up for the Christian faith, which to you and I is a yahoo. Okay? Christopher Columbus. Now, I want you to look at this guy's title. Okay? Admiral of the Ocean Sea, Viceroy and Governor of whatever territory he may discover, sighted sandpipers, green reeds, and finally land, which we call the West Indies. That title allowed that man that any kind of property he put his foot on, he could institute any rule, any religion, any program he so desired to institute the moment he set foot on that property. Because he was coming directly from the king and the pope. And what did you know about those guys? They're running the show. So if you send out an emissary, that emissary has the same power structure that was back home. That's why this guy was... It's amazing he didn't push it, but he had that power behind him at the time. Historians call the next 150 years the Age of Discovery, as colonies were planted, trade routes were mapped out, and the Roman Church was looking at a new group of people to bring under the guidance of the Pope and to fill the coffers. I didn't put that part in there. So, okay, and I understand. If you pay attention to now, if you have any knowledge at all of why aliens are allowed into the country and who's behind it, the Catholic Church is behind probably 85% of it coming in from the down south area. Why? Because those guys bring little nickels with them, and when they put the little nickels in the basket, the church is happy. And they're smart enough to know that that bunch is going to come in here and believe like the original people did, and they're not going to buck the system. Amazing. I mean, there's absolutely nothing religious about any of it. There's nothing Christian about any of it. It is all politics and power and money. And it happened again and again and again and again, over and over and over. Okay? So, here we go. Problem? Oh, good, we're going to have a wrestling match. They should be won by the holy faith with love or by force. Gee, wonder what's going to win first. This is a weird pile here, let me tell you. Franciscans and Jesuits, winning took place by persevering lives. Now, I haven't figured out how the Jesuits got into this love neighborhood. I imagine it's probably not going to last forever, but that's how they did start out. Just to give them kudos at the beginning of the program. All right? Others, with troops of ruthless conquering Christians, forced baptism upon natives at the point of a sword. I think every baptismal pool should have swords hanging over it. And why would they do that? You have to get the people to submit to the program, because if you don't get them under the program, they'll get away from you once they figure out what the program is. So, sorry, that's just the way it works. Dilemma. Decide what a heathen is. Is it mankind stumbling in uncertain quest of true God, or humanity organized in a hardened resistance to the gospel? That question will work no matter where you plug that puppy in. It really will. Okay? And can you see how determination? All right, now, anybody run into the native Indians when you come onto the beach up at Daytona? Have you done that lately? No. Why? They've either been absorbed or eradicated. I'm sorry. You think things changed? Not so much. They just put different titles on it and called it the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That's a nice name. Okay? So please understand, history doesn't change, it just dresses itself up in a little different costume. Take it off, it all looks the same. All right. Now, options considered. Option number 1, commingle the heathen religion's good qualities with the desire to build on that foundation of belief system in God. How's that one work? Is that how you evangelize, Kevin? Oh, come on. Well, come on, they did it in Corinth. Because you could go to the prostitute and meet God.
Right.
It's in the Bible. It really is. Honest. I mean, I'm just seeing God. I'm not thinking that's what you saw, Hoss. Okay? All right. I'm sorry. I got off on a sidetrack there. Okay. Option number 2. Conquer and lay down the law. That one sounds good to me. Let's do that one. New area to evangelize, west coast of Africa from 1486 down to the tip called Cape of Good Hope. So now you got them working in Africa. You got them in the West Indies, all right? In 1495, Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, goes toward Asia, but hit India first. Malabar Coast, trade center for trade, all for Portugal. Portugal has a different idea than Rome. Portugal wants trade routes. Portugal wants money. Portugal wants that only. They don't give 2 spits in a bucket about your soul as long as you can trade. All right? That's the way they put it together. And here we go. In 1516, Portugal reached China. In 1543, they reached Japan. Portugal was not interested in colonizing, but rather in monopolizing the trade routes. Now, here's a neat little thing that happens with it. Okay? You know what every ship had? Anybody ever pay any attention to it? They all had a clergy on them. Or they were all shipped off by the church. There were no business consortiums sending anything. It was either the king or the pope sending all these guys out. So ship this stuff with it, and here's the deal. Every trading settlement they set up, okay, had a little Catholic cluster of churches in it. So what are you doing now? Now West Africa, India, China, all the way up around to all of them are going to have Catholicism interweaved in it. Why? Because that's what was there when they started trading. Common, comfortable, part of the program. Okay? Spanish loot the Americas from California to the tip of South America by 1521. He's the one that took the conquer and, yeah, he went with this phase 2. Okay? By 1521, Cortez had destroyed the Incan Empire and murdered Atahualpa, the monarch, all for his gold. Okay? Now, anybody like to pay any attention to where the ships sank, where they came from, why they came from where they came from? There's why. Spanish galleons were coming out of Mexico, all through Central America, after looting all of these quote-unquote indigenous people and getting the gold and shipping it back to home. If they happen to run into a storm, so be it. That's why you can go to the ocean and find a doubloon laying on the floor, because of this kind of stuff going on. All right? I guess they used the conquering method. I don't know what you say. I don't remember being taught Cortez was a bad guy when I learned it in school. Anybody? Anybody get it put together that way? Okay. All this time, it is worth noting, happened in Martin Luther's lifetime. Martin Luther's over here doing his thing, and here's what's taking place on this side of the water. All right? This is where Charles V came into all his wealth. All the looted that he had, all the booty that he had brought back, all the stuff that he had for his queen was all as a result of the conquering these particular groups of people and sending it all back to the Europe. So as Charles V struggled to keep Germany from slipping into Protestant hands, he found comfort in all the ships arriving from Mexico and the West Indies laden with gold. Subplot under the surface of the Spanish conquistadors was a zeal to extend the holy faith, the Roman Catholic faith of their fathers. I don't know how far underground I think it was so far underground it was probably kept in their shoe. But this is something that they could do along the way. Sacrifices, this is kind of weird. Sacrifices of monks and friars were extraordinary. Voyages were risky, and they got no furloughs. If you were a friar or a monk and you pulled duty in the New World, it was a lifetime duty. You went and you never came back. Okay? Out of 376 Jesuits who sailed for China in between 1581 and 1712, 127 of them died en route. Ships went down, died of some disease, whatever the case might be. To avoid rivalry, in 1493, the Spanish-born Pope Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, drew a line on a map from the North Pole to the South Pole, west of the Azores. All of the west of this line belonged to Spain, east belonged to Portugal. This is why Brazil is a Portuguese-speaking area and the rest of South America speaks Spanish. I had no clue. And guess who did it? One of our good buddies, the Popes. Why? To keep a wrestling match as to who could go where and who could loot what. So, and that little thing, Allie found that map so that you can see where it's at. It's really cool. And it still exists. So, it's just interesting. Regional evangelism employed the soldiers. The idea was to extend the concept of the Christian prince. Now, with that earlier on, what's a Christian prince? Christian prince is somebody of power somewhere that everybody can focus on. Doesn't have to be the Pope. It can be somebody called by the Pope, put in an area, and that's where everything goes. So that everybody that believes in this local prince that automatically transfers it back to the Pope. I'm not sure how it gets there, but it does. Okay? The idea was that this Christian prince, the divinely appointed spiritual guide of his people. There's a job description. Okay? He was subject to remove all signs of idolatry from the land and bring his subjects to the rule of Christ through the Holy Catholic Church. So, same old, just different day, same stuff. This could be called a crusade, violent and fanatical. Understand, they did not call it a crusade. Okay? What did they call it? Just conquering. A nice word. Cortez was a ruthless and skilled conqueror. He was devoted to the Virgin Mary and always kept a statuette of her on his person. Went to Mass daily, and prayer was constantly coming off the guy's lips. Had 2 flags everywhere he went. One of them was a cross, the other was a picture of the Virgin. I'm figuring this guy was pretty well hooked. Now, there's nothing worse than somebody under the guise of God killing people and conquering people. Okay? If you want to pay attention to why the Muslims are going ape over here in the Middle East, who told them to do it? Their God. Okay? Good old Allah laid it out for them, and by golly, they're going with it tooth and nail. So, at any rate, kind of a weird program, but created slaves of the locals to work in the gold mines and plantations. I'm sure that made a lot of happy people. for which they received instruction and protection in the holy faith. I don't see anything in there about getting paid to do it, but by golly, they got instructions. What does that? Catechism. Pretty close. And what kind of protection did they get in the holy faith? Well, just be thankful the sword's not dropping on your neck today. Dig that gold, rascal. Okay? I mean, it's just, it's hard to believe that this is actually history. Okay? I'm sorry, it's just weird. First ordained priest in the New World was Bartholomew de las Casas. His father was on the second voyage of Columbus's. He became the champion for the natives by preaching against the cruelty he observed. Met with resistance, gee, I wonder why, but keeps on keeping on, okay? 14 trips across the Atlantic this old boy did, wins a new law in 1542, called the Law of the Indies, set new standard to reduce severity of the cruel system and states the Indians had human rights too. The next sentence doesn't bode well for the 14 trips though. The law in Spain, not practiced much in Mexico. I'm sure they had that little thing on the wall where you see the cast and the thumb up and workman's comp, and I'm sure that's what that sign was. Okay. So, at any rate, it was a little odd. So here we go. See as how that's not working. In 1550, Lacasse argued for equality and freedom of the Indians. Argument against him, one of Aristotle's. When did Aristotle live? That boy was BC, okay? And here he is creeping into the 1500s, still sticking a finger in somebody's eye, okay? One of the arguments that certain people are born to slavery, okay? They had to drag that puppy up from 1600 years ago to see if they can control this rogue monk. Well, I'm sorry, it just didn't work so good. But at any rate, La Casa fails, but Christian imperialism continues. Okay? Portugal followed similar patterns in the Orient, only not as cruel. I don't know what that means. They didn't give any real definitions. Okay? Main reason was that they encountered highly developed civilization and ancient religions far stronger than the Aztec and Incas. Who would those guys be? Monks, Shaolin monks, Buddhist monks, all of those guys that have been around for eons didn't buy this nonsense for one split second. And if a guy can cut you up that fast, I'm pretty sure you're not going to want to try to evangelize him. Okay? So that's how that got slowed down over there. Tried to blend Christianity into the regional belief system without much success. Baptism never did catch on. Oh, that's okay. Just come on over here. I'm going to dunk you under the water. Okay. All right. So, Francis Xavier, great pioneer of Christian missions, 1506 to 1552, was from Portugal. An associate of our good buddy Ignatius Loyola, makes it to Japan in 1514. Thank God some of the people that knew that man didn't turn out like that man. Okay? It was a really neat thing to see. The guy did some stuff, but it was just... All right. Method. Don't discard anything in Japanese life and culture. Just transform and refine it. Now, isn't that the way you peddle the gospel, Kevin? At least he wasn't cutting people's heads off. In 1577, he had great success. Now, the way he did it is exceedingly sharp. Okay? A new town was established as a home for Christian converts. The only problem is you pay attention to the name. It was called Nagasaki. In other words, it didn't last forever, okay? By the end of I could not believe it when I saw that thing pop up on the screen. All right. By the end of the century, though, there were 300,000 converts and hundreds of churches and 2 Christian colleges. All right, now something's going on, but it's not, from what they're doing, I don't know that it's obviously not legit. Okay? 17th century, new ruler fearful of foreign missionaries meant foreign invaders to that particular group of new rulers. So they launched a policy of persecution. of course. From 1614 to 1642, the 4,045 martyrs, sword, stake, or boiling cauldron. Okay, so people that were professing this way were shut down. The only remnant were a few people that lived in the Nagasaki Hills. Okay, so, yep, I'm sorry, yes, sir. Gonna get it finished? I don't know, we're coming close.
Now, this idea of discard, transform and refine, that's kind of the idea a lot of missionaries have today.
It is.
Basically. I mean, that's what they're
It
doing.
truly is.
That's exactly what they're doing.
I know. They're not they're not giving the gospel. They're trying to cause a hybrid
Right.
of some kind so that they're comfortable. And it's no different than a book they tried to give me in the late 90s called The Unchurched Harry and Mary. I'm supposed to make my church comfortable for a loser to come in
Right.
and mess it up.
Right.
Of course, I didn't teach the book, so I got yelled at.
Right.
But I'm sorry, that's just not that's not what church is about.
That's the premise of a lot of missionary endeavors today.
Still, yes, sir. Never. It's Kevin. It'll never change. Why? They don't have the guts to believe what they actually should believe.
Right.
They don't want the power to come from where it comes from. They want it to come from them. And
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of world system concepts are woven into that.
oh, yeah. I mean, we're seeing a bunch of it right here. So, China, Ming Dynasty, not interested in Christianity at all. Okay? Consider China a giver of culture, not a receiver. Now, I'm figuring that was probably a 1,000-year-old saying, and they weren't buying the program, so that was the end of it. Belief, Confucianism. Okay? And what did Confucius do? All that guy did was write proverbs. You know? Don't spit into the wind, you know, that kind of stuff. It just didn't make any sense to me, but that's what they based their world on. Okay? Well, it is a good one, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to get me into heaven, okay? So I'm just saying, it's just kind of one of those scenarios that it's just unbelievable when you look at this stuff. Now, here we go. The hammer that cracked the rock, Matthew Ricci, in 1552 to 1610. Well versed in mathematics, astronomy, and cosmology. In 1557, he settles in Macau. And there's how it's spelled now. That's how it was spelled in some of the books. A Portuguese trading post in the South China Sea, and learns the language and customs. Now this, to me, is what a missionary should do. I don't know that he was peddling the right stuff, but this is how you do it. In 1583, he was permitted to settle in Chongqing, or Zhaoqing, okay? Depending on where you want to hang. Depends on what you want on your address, okay? With their traditional respect for a scholar, the Chinese responded to a man dressed in the garb of a Mandarin. Everybody seen Mandarins? You seen Big Trouble in Little China? Come on, man. Kurt Russell's in the movie? I'm going to have to work with you guys. You need to expand your vision a little bit here. At any rate, they're dressed with the hats and the big shoulder things and all that kind of, okay, just so you know. Just to help you get the idea of what you're looking at here. And who spoke the language. Ricci made the map of the world for them and introduced them to a new science of the calendar. Okay? Trick. Ricci still, oh no, I missed it. In 1600, he gained permission to travel to the palace in the Forbidden City, which is now
It's in Beijing.
Peking. Yeah, cool. And that's not normal. You don't go to Peking without a real serious invitation. Okay? Just so you realize. And now it's modern Beijing, and what's Beijing trying to do now? Anybody paying any attention to them on the map lately? They want to be noted as a center for tech. That's what they're trying to do now. What would that do for China? People would gravitate there like they gravitated to the western coast of the United States. So that's what they're trying to do. So, at any rate, he brought gifts for the emperor, 2 clocks, which pleased the monarch. Okay? The trick, Ricci still, in keeping the clocks in working order, kept them in Peking for 10 years. He was the resident clock fixer. And that's what kept him in Dodge. Okay? Other job, mathematician and astronomer. Ricci died in 1610, and the church, with the church that he was working with, had 2,000 people. His successor, Adam Shaw, 1592 to 1666, wins the admiration of the Chinese scholar class by accurately predicting the time of the eclipse of the moon. Why? Because he knew mathematics. New job, Director of Imperial Astronomical Service. Now, what are we doing? They are evangelizing by becoming part of the people. Does that work, Kevin? You're gonna have their ear better if they trust you than if you don't. Don't know what they're peddling. They're peddling the Church of Rome, so it's not really that great. But Christianity's going to get involved in it, or you wouldn't have, what's the guy that everybody reads out of China?
Watchman Nee.
Reed.
Well, yes. See, you wouldn't have that without this basis here of them having that come through the work somewhere. Okay. So anyway, here when he's going to do, he does what he did, gains freedom for Christianity in 1657 to exist in the whole empire. Okay? Now they're using the word Christianity. The definition is probably still a little sketchy as far as we're concerned. At Shaw's death, Christians numbered 276,000. The only problem is they're Jesuits. And I don't know what, and like I said, thank God all Jesuits aren't like Ignatius. This one seems to be working. Had adaptation gone too far? In 1631, a Franciscan and a Dominican arrived in Peking and were shocked at what they found. Here's the problem with it, Kevin. The words used to translate Christian Mass in the Jesuit Catechism was a Chinese character for the ceremony of ancestral worship. Son of a gun, we were doing so good up till then. One night, the friars went in disguise to such a ceremony. They watched as Chinese Christians participated and were scandalized at what they saw. They reported their experience to Rome, and the quarrel over the rites began. The Pope approved, another disapproved, until after a century, the whole mission in China fell into serious decline. So, things weren't... I don't... What would happen, Kevin, if you just went and did what you were supposed to do?
I mean, well, look in the tribulation period when 144,000 are going around, right? They're not doing any of that,
They're not doing... There's no bells and whistles. Just go tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may.
basically.
That's basically what it... Now, here's the deal with where we at here. And we got... Here's what's coming onto the scene next, and I don't know how much time do we have. Are we about killed it? Pretty close. Let me see if I get through this page, because this is kind of neat. This is where our good old Puritans show up. Allegory 101. In 16, and that wasn't in the book. This is what I saw when I read it. Okay, 1630. John Cotton preaches. Sorry about that. I was sermonizing. Preaches farewell sermon to 400 immigrants headed for the New World. 2 Samuel 7:10 is what he did, and he said, "I appointed also to a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, and that they may live in their own place and not be disturbed again. Nor will the wicked afflict them any more as formerly."
That was a good title.
Well, I figured it was pretty close. I've been educated enough. I mean, so Cotton calls them God's chosen people, like the ancient Israelites headed to the land chosen, prepared to labor undisturbed for the glory of God. Okay? Sounds like we're going on a real run here. This is a snapshot of Puritanism. The Bible is the guidebook providing concrete instructions for the believer's conversion and the construction of a society designed to reinforce the biblical view of the state. The church, often pictured analogously to Israel, is also rightly pictured as pictured in the scriptures and should function as the agent for individual and societal reform. Thank God they had to slip that rascal in there, didn't they? The society and the nation should also be ordered to bolster the purpose of God being played out in history. That sounds like a military camp to me, but I'm not sure. Here we go. Historic movement endured from 1560 to 1660. That's 100 years. Gave Christians every generation a model of Christian faith as decisive commitment to Jesus Christ, how to live a life in public arena in a nation governed by the truths of the Bible. That didn't even hold up in the United States for that long. It couldn't. There were too many other people around, and it just did not work. In more recent centuries, Christians have renewed from time to time the Puritan experience of the soul. I don't know how they do that, but they do. Piety arising from the purely gracious work of God in the heart of a believer. When was the last time that happened to you, Kevin? Not working good? Have to check your piety meter? But no later Christian movement has had a vision or an opportunity to apply the law of God to the life of a nation. This was genuinely a test kitchen. Nobody was going to mess with it. They were going to give it a shot, and it fell on his face. Is basically what it amounts to. In our day, Puritan equals self-righteous, hyper-religious, and sexually repressed. One who does his best to keep people from having fun. Trivia, quip. Puritanism was the haunting fear that someone somewhere was having fun. I've heard it a million times. Okay? Puritan Bible was the Geneva Bible. Why was it the Geneva Bible? Because that's where Calvin was, and that's where the Bible was generated, and that's where this hub started to begin with. All right? What caused their vision for the new world to grow? They had very, very, very little confidence in the traditional religion that they were seeing in Europe. Okay? Am I out of time yet, guys? How close? Oh, 3 minutes. Whew. Had deep conviction that spiritual conversion was crucial to Christianity. This rebirth separated Puritans from the mass of mankind. In their head, it did that. Okay? Nowhere else. Everybody else saw them for what they really were. All right? And endowed them with privileges and duties of the elect of God. So, they're putting some bogus list together again. Here we go. Church may prepare a man for the existence and after it. The church may guide him. But the heart of this experience, the reception of grace by God, is beyond the church's control. Now, does that sound solid, Kevin?
Okay, I didn't hear the last one. You said what now?
It says the church may prepare a man for the experience of being elect, and after it, the church may guide him. But the heart of this experience, the reception of the grace of God, is beyond the church's control.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds solid.
Right.
To me, it does, okay? Of course, they're going to dink it up. Puritan purifying movement. Okay, there were 3 phases of them. Am I out of time? Am I burning them? Okay, we'll kill it, right? We'll stop right there, Big Geek. All right? We'll start with the purifying movement. I don't know whether that means everybody has to drink some Epsom salts before they come next week or what, but we'll work on it. And we'll have more notes, and we'll see. How far did we get? Thank God, we got closer.
We're
trying.
Were the Pilgrims part of that movement?
Part of the yes.
Yeah.
Pilgrims were part of it, and if you get into the American history, you'll find something called the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
Right.
They were big into it, but they came over and had different programs going on, and a little group called the Congregationalists stuck a fork in Puritanism because they were just as tough about it as Puritans were. And I've got some stuff, if I can find it in that book I read of Adams, you would not believe how territorial these churches were with areas in the northeast of the United States. I mean, Samaritan stuff that you read in the Bible, it didn't hold a candle to what these guys did. If somebody of the wrong persuasion stepped into your county, woo, it was not pretty.
How much of that the spiritual Israel was intermingled with the
Oh, it was politics.
with politics?
It was politics. Oh, heavens, yes.
And all of this, right?
Yeah, and there back then when the pastor was whipping out and going after it, hellfire and brimstone type stuff, he was throwing politics in it. I mean, King of England, yada yada yada, but just banging away at everything he could. He had no compunction of separating the two. So everything they didn't like over there, they did here. Great bunch. All right, let's pray before we get depressed. All right. Thank you, Lord, for tonight. We thank you for how you showed us things that are just amazing to us, not knowing where it came from. Now we see a basis for it. We appreciate the fact that we can study it, and we've enjoyed the time. Give us the last 2 weeks that we've got coming, Lord. Allow us to get as far as you would have us to get, and that we can enjoy it in you. In Christ's name, amen.